Hello readers and writers, I am MJ and today I have May's massive book haul. So typically throughout the year, I will receive books from book boxes, I'll receive some books from publishers, and occasionally I'll pick some up that are specific to something that I'm very interested in, such as trans writers or autistic representation or something like that. I don't do a lot of book shopping because I still have a lot of books that I need to read, and I do really like reading on an e-reader and read a lot of ARCs as well. However, there's two main exceptions for that. The first is in December, where I will buy myself or take my kid to the bookshop to buy me books. And so I tend to have a bigger book haul in December. And then in May, where it is my birthday. This year, for my birthday, I decided I wanted to go visit bookstores, local and semi-local to me, ones that I hadn't really seen before. Partly I wanted to do this because we're contemplating moving outside of the area, and I wanted to make sure that I visited the bookstores that are around me before we go. But two, I just want to make sure I'm supporting independently owned bookstores. And we ended up visiting a lot more bookstores than I expected. And I have a whole vlog out about it that you can go and watch now. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the books I received from publishers this month. So I was selected to receive a package of ARCs from Riverhead Books, so I'm very grateful for them for sending these books to me. The first is The Late Americans, and I'm going to go through a lot of these books pretty fast, but I do want to kind of give voice to the ARCs that I did receive. So this is a deeply innovating new novel of young men and women at crossroads. So in a shared and private space of Iowa City, a loose circle of lovers and friends encounter, confront, and provoke one another in a volatile year of self-discovery. At the group center are Ivan, a dancer turned aspiring banker who babbles in amateur pornography; Fatima, whose independence and work ethics complete her relationship with friends and trusted mentor; and Noah, who didn't seek sex out so much as it came to him like an anxious dog in need of affection. So I don't know. I'm gonna give this book a try. Being a romantic asexual, y'all know I don't really necessarily go for this. I don't know. We will see how this goes and works for me. If it doesn't work for me, obviously I will share the ARC with someone else. Also from Riverhead Books is My Murder, a novel, and this is Lou is a happily married mother of an adorable toddler. She also is the victim of a local serial killer. Recently brought back to life and returned to her grieving family by a government project, she is grateful for the second chance. But as the new Lou adapts to her old routine, she realizes that disturbing questions remain about what exactly preceded her death and how much she can really trust those around her. Now, it's not enough to care for her child, love her husband, and work at the job she's always enjoyed. She must also figure out the circumstances of her death. Darkly comic, hauntingly paced, and full of surprises, My Murder is a clever, devour-in-one-sitting twist on the classic thriller. And this really intrigues me, so I'm very excited to pick this one up. And then the last book that I received from Riverhead Books is Holding Patterns, and this is Kathleen Cheng has blown up her life. She's gone through a humiliating breakup, dropped out of her graduate program, and left everything behind. Now she's back in her childhood home in Oakland, wondering what's next. To her surprise, her mother isn't the same person Kathleen remembers. No longer depressed or desperate to return to China, the new Marissa Cheng is sporty, perky, and has been transformed by love. Kathleen thought she'd be planning her own wedding, but instead finds herself helping her mother plan hers, to a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur. Grasping for directions, Kathleen takes a job at a startup that specializes in unusual services, but an unforeseen attachment at someone at work pushes her to rethink her relationships, especially the ones with Marissa. Will they succeed in seeing each other as anew, adult to adult? As they peel back the layers of history, the old wounds, cultural barriers, and complex affection, they must come to a new understanding of how they compel each other forward and what they've done to hold each other back. Brilliantly observant, tender, and warm, Holding Patterns is a hopeful novel about immigration and belonging, mother-daughter relationships, and the many ways we learn to hold each other. And this is probably a little bit different than what I would normally pick up, but I am extremely excited about it. I think it's good to read outside your norm a little bit, and this one, I don't know, it just seems like a very interesting story to read. So this next novel I received from Flattron Books. So I actually have an e-arc of this also, but they reached out and asked if I wanted a paper version, and since this is one of my most highly anticipated reads of this quarter, I told them yes, mostly because paper versions make better pictures. And so I've kind of already talked about this in my most anticipated science fiction books, but so I'm just going to briefly say that they're on a ship and there's an explosion, and then they kind of have to, like, there's a whole thing about who did it, and I'm very excited about it. This book came in a whole book box package that I unwrapped on Instagram Live. It's Clemens, I can't say the title right to save my life, but it is, but I am so excited about this. When I read through what it was, I'm very, very excited to pick this up. And lastly, the last book I got from publishers this month is The Woman Inside, and this releases June 13th, and it's from Celadon Books, who has sent me books in the past, so I'm really grateful for them. So, a wealthy couple ends up murdered in the nicest part of town in this compulsively readable page-turning thriller from M.T. Edvardson, The Woman Inside. So, I have been on a thriller kick, so I'm definitely very excited to read this one as well. So next, let's go over the books I received in Books Boxes this month. In Illumicrate, I received Some Desperate Glory. This is a science fiction queer novel that is absolutely gorgeous, and I really, really want to read this soon. From Rainbow Crate, with the exclusive Rainbow Crate cover, is the book Andre and Sante, We're Here. And this has non-binary representation, Chilean representation, Mexican-American and undocumented immigrant representation, and it is mostly a YA novel, but there is somehow there's still 10% of adult in here, and it did sound very interesting, and I do like that Rainbow Crate is attempting, it's just so glossy, okay, I do like that Rainbow Crate is, like, attempting to find just not straight up YA books in traditional publishing, and I know that's extremely hard when it comes to queer books. Also from Illumicrate is a special edition of The Bruising of Kilwa, and I have already read this book. I have an ebook or a digital version of it. And this cover is stunning. The all their indie books are so well crafted, and I honestly got this box specifically because I wanted to have this beautiful edition on my shelves. I enjoyed this book. It was definitely different, and I appreciated that. I think it was like a 4-star read for me, not quite a 5-star, because there was some plot decisions that I didn't necessarily appreciate, but it still really enjoyed reading it and really liked the writing style and the world. And because Unplugged Book Box was kind of behind on shipping because of their books getting published, I ended up with 2 of their books this month. And the first is Fenton Street, and this is a mystery novel that, again, just is a stunning edition. This is my first Unplugged Book Box book, and I really like their box. Is like the picks that they select are very diverse in genre, and it's just not all the same over and over again. And then I also received, I haven't even taken it out of the plastic wrapping yet, but Daughters of Smoke and Fire, and I think this is a contemporary one, a contemporary book. Maybe I should open it, I guess. So this is an unforgettable, haunting story of a young Kurdish woman's perilous fight for freedom and justice for her brother. And set primarily in Iran, this extraordinary debut novel weaves 50 years of modern Kurdish history through a story of a family facing oppression and injustice, all too familiar to the Kurds. I mean, where else would you get such a great, well, I won't say great, but non-mainstream in terms of like book talk and like traditional publishing kind of same stories, but also get it in such a beautiful edition. So I haven't like read any of the books yet because there's only the first two, but I am excited to add these books to my shelf and read them. So now let's get into the books I got while book shopping. So I did two separate excursions. The first excursion was to bookstores in the Long Beach area, and the second excursion was to bookstores in downtown LA. Alright, before we get into the specifics of what I got at each bookstore, I have decided that I'm going to start building back my Star Trek books in paper version. I had them, and then, you know, they were at my mother's house, and I lost them, and while I was raising my kids, it was just too much. I really didn't have paper books at all. I went exclusively digital, and now that I am having paper books in addition to digital books, I decided that I'm going to restart my paper version of my Star Trek books, while still also having them on digital version. But so I'm only picking up Star Trek books when I find them in a good condition for a good price. And while I was book shopping, a lot of the stores that I went to were used bookstores, and I ended up actually getting a lot more Star Trek books than I expected. So this new revised Star Trek collection is off to a very good start. So I know most of y'all are probably not as interested in these books as I am, so I'm just going to show them very briefly of what I have. And I'm going to start with the hardback versions that I got. I got Shadows of the Sun, which is the original series. And then I got Star Trek's Sarek, and this is like plastic coated, but it's not a library edition. Excellent find. Star Trek The Next Generation crossover, so this has both the original series as well as the Next Generation series. It does have a price tag I'm going to have to take off, but it was a really good price. And then The Views from the Bridge. And while I typically don't pick up mass paperback versions of books anymore, because as I've gotten older, they're too small for me to print. They're too small for me really to read. The only way to really get the Star Trek numbered books are through mass paperback, so I am collecting them that way, even though I'll probably still read them on ebook, not gonna lie. So I have two of the original series, number 19 and number 51. And then I got number 1 of The Next Generation in excellent condition. I'm really excited about that. Number 11, also in excellent condition. Number 14, I don't even know if it's been opened, although there's just a minor shelfware on it. And number 43. And for Star Trek Voyager, I got Shadow of Heaven. This may possibly be available in hardcover, but I don't think so. So I got it in paperback. And then for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I got number 1, Emissary, in fairly good condition with just some minor shelfware. And then number 19, this is probably the most torn up one that I got, but it was a really good price also. And so there is the restart of my Star Trek. I do have some, but really restarting my Star Trek paper collection. Alright, so now let's go into the books I got while book shopping. I picked up Philip K. Dick, The Divine Invasion. I don't have any of his in paper, but I do want to read more of his works. I picked this up at Gatsby bookstore. They did have a lot of science fiction, but so I got this. Also, they had really cool stickers there, so I picked up that one. And the kid picked up a bat for some reason. I'm not sure why. Also, the kid picked up some of their own books while we were there, and I'm not hauling them, but they may come in some of my reviews, because I told any book that they read, I will read after them, because they're mostly graphic novels and manga, which are not my main genre, but it was kind of a way of helping encourage them to actually read these books, because they really do like graphic novels and manga, but it's hard for them to focus on books. So while we were out picking up cupcakes from this local bakery that we go to, because both me and my kid have food allergies, so we have to go to a specific bakery to get really yummy birthday cupcakes. While we were there, there's a Goodreads next to it, and Goodreads, wow. There's a Goodwill that's right next to it, so I decided to stop in to see if they happened to have any books, and they did. So I got Michael Crichton's book next, which I haven't read, and I was a Michael Crichton fan person, like, growing up. I devoured his books, and then I kind of have stopped reading them, and it's definitely ones that I would like to revisit. So when I saw this, and I don't think I've read it, or if I have, it's been a while, I absolutely picked it up. And then I also saw this beautiful edition of Wicked and Son of the Witch, and I don't even know if I'm going to necessarily like this book, but it was so gorgeous that I decided that I was going to give it a shot. So, and if not, I'm sure if for some reason I don't like it, I'm sure I can find someone else who would love it, but I couldn't just leave it there on the shelf. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I have one more book box book that came in, and that is Brandon Sanderson's second secret novel, which is not secret anymore, because here is the title: The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. And look at this gorgeous edition. I did read this already. I read the ebook when it first came out, and again, the color and so this one gets to go right on my shelves. Also, earlier in the month, so still counting this as birthday book haul, but the first stop was actually Target had a 2-for-1 sale on their books, so I went and looked and picked up Fourth Wing. I haven't started reading it yet, but I've heard a lot of amazing things about it, so I'm hopeful that I will really enjoy it. But this cover, I mean, they nailed it on the marketing for this book. Absolutely nailed it. So I picked it up. And then in that same trip, I also got Lessons in Chemistry, which this is one I've been debating whether or not I wanted to read. It's definitely outside my normal genre, but reading the cover, I decided that it's one I really wanted to give a shot at, hoping and hopefully I will enjoy it. So we visited 2 used bookstores in Long Beach. One of these Planet books, I only picked up Star Trek books, so you've already seen those, but the other ones, in addition to Star Trek books, I ended up picking up 2 science fiction books, and that one is Ray Bradbury, From the Dust Returned, and I remember in middle school I had a debate with my English teacher of whether Ray Bradbury or Isaac Asimov was the better science fiction writer, and I was appalled that my middle school teacher had never even heard of Isaac Asimov at all. Now, as an adult, I may have changed my opinion about who I think is the better writer, but, and I may actually be more prone to Ray Bradbury than Isaac Asimov, but both are still an integral part of my middle school reading. And I'm noticing a theme to this book haul. There's a lot of nostalgia involved in it. At that same bookstore, I ended up picking up the special edition of H.G. Wells. Have I read everything in the book? No, actually, I don't think I have. I don't think I've read The First Man on the Moon and The Food of the Gods. So that's exciting. But it was so gorgeous. And when I checked out, the person who checked out was like, I think we may have just gotten this in because we just got it. I mean, because I haven't seen it before. And I'm like, I think you're right, because any reasonable person would have picked this up because it's absolutely gorgeous. So I was the reasonable person that picked it up. Okay, so that same day, my kid really wanted to go to a comic book store, and I was like, great, let's go. This is actually a comic book store. It's Amazing Comics, and it's one that we have been to prior. So it wasn't a new store for us to visit, but it's been a while since we've been there, so it was great to support it. And while there, I picked up Star Trek Picard Countdown, which I guess could have gone with my Star Trek book haul, but didn't. So there we go. And also the DC Book of Pride. And is this a nod to Pride Month by a massive corporation? Yes. But is it geeky? Yes. And does it tell about queer superheroes, mostly that were developed recently because they realized that there was very little queer representation? Also, yes. And I want to read about all of them. So I picked up the book. So when we went to downtown, we went to the last bookstore, and a lot of the Star Trek books I got were also from there. So I picked up, there's a lot of Star Trek books divided between the three stores. That's about it. But I also picked up Neil Gaiman's Fragile Things, and I haven't read this novel. I've read a lot of Neil Gaiman, but he's so many books that I haven't read a lot of them. And I think this might be a new series cover release, and I really, really liked it. So of the books they had there, I hadn't read any of them, so I had the kid pick out the one based basically off of the title, and this is the one they picked. So this is the one I'm going to read, and I'm very excited for it. Neil Gaiman's books usually are hit or miss for me. I usually absolutely love them or just think they're eh. So we'll find out which one I think about this. And at that same bookstore, I picked up Raymond Carver, The Long Goodbye. I used to, when I was in college the first time, so in my late teens, I was a fiend for Raymond Carver. I think because he was just so different than what I had read prior. But I really had mostly read his short stories, which he's most known for, and I really admired the way he built stories and characters in them. So I'm not sure if I've read The Long Goodbye or not, but I've been really, really wanting to pick up more Raymond Carver, and so when I saw this in the local author display, I was like, yeah, this is a great chance to pick some up. Also, he's native to LA, which I guess is not surprising, but what did kind of surprise me is I didn't realize exactly how old these books were. So he published his first short story in 1933, and then he actually passed away in 1959. And so that's, I mean, we're talking on almost 100 years now. Now, when I first read him, it was like 20 years ago, so it wasn't, I don't know, this 20 years, I guess, is a big deal, but still was older than I guess realized at the time, but still excited to pick it up because it was still pretty edgy 20 years ago. Then we went, the last bookstore we went to for the whole project, as well as for downtown LA, was it was a Japanese bookstore that had a lot of manga, so my kid was really, really excited. But I was really impressed with just the variety of books that they had there, and they had a lot of books and a lot of different types of books. There was a lot of contemporary books. Well, more than I expected for sure, and I did end up picking up Veronica's Ross because it's a signed edition. I love Veronica Ross, and her newest writing has really resonated with me. Ironically, I read the ARC for this, and this novella I thought was underdeveloped, but when I saw it was a signed edition, and overall I really, really like her writing style. I want to say I debated with myself, but really I turned to my kid and said, should I buy it? And they're like, yes, you should. And then I made the decision. And the bookstore's name is Kinokuniya. And I absolutely said that wrong. This is the name of the bookstore that we visited. There we go. while we were there, I wanted to pick up something that I couldn't necessarily get elsewhere, because the kind of, for me, the whole point of going to these bookstores was to get things that, I don't know, it was just kind of a vibe thing. And this bookstore had a lot of Asian American novel authors in general, which is really great, and not just Japanese authors, just Asian authors in general. And so I wanted, especially since, you know, May is Asian American Pacific Islander month, I wanted to pick up some more books from Asian American Pacific Islander authors. So the one I did end up picking up is Haruki Murakami, and I have read his works before. I know I've read at least one of his books. I think I've read 2 of his books, and I found it to be very mystical, but that was kind of the type of book it was. This one seems to be more contemporary, and looking at the back of, like, he has written a lot, and looking at just having the choice to pick up which book I was going to read of his, there's a lot of very diverse works that he has done, and so I wanted something that I haven't really seen before. And so this is South of the Border, West of the Sun, and so if you've heard about this one of his books, let me know. But it's one of his that I haven't heard about before and sounded really interesting, so this is the one I ended up picking up. But I also picked up something very different for me, and this is Abstinence of a Bookworm. And this is a, what did they call it on this sign? Short verse, I think. So, oh, there's like a little mini poster in it. I didn't know that. So, it's not manga. It's actually written in prose, but then there's some pictures throughout it, and it's about books and liking books. I think she was so she's a person that absolutely loved reading and books, and then gets like reborn, and books aren't available anymore, and they're really expensive if they are available, and so she decides to create her own. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pick up something that's different for me to try, then this is something that I am very interested in. So that is my book haul, and I don't know how many books it was. It was lots. There's 4 piles over here. Did I get them all? Hold on. Oh, I have to share. Okay. So also we picked up Lore Olympics, and honestly I didn't realize the kid actually bought this because I probably would have bought the special editions from Illumicrate had I known that they wanted it, but that's okay. Illumicrate was actually the first and second volume are actually out of stock, so we now have this, but it's actually for the kid, but I'll end up reading it. And then we picked up Plants vs. Zombies just because it was the last bookstore has used books mixed in with their new books, and this was in one of the used kids books, and I used to love this game, so we picked it up for fun. But while we were there, because I know this video is definitely not long enough, they had Star Trek cards. See this? 1991 Star Trek cards. And they were selling them for $4, the original price. And I told my kid, so I have the Next Generation and the original. And I told my kid I will never open them up. And I don't think I will. Because I used to have these, and I used to collect them, and I used to have them in binders. And it went the same way as all my Star Trek books. And all my Star Trek stuff. But I'm not going to dwell on the past, and I'm going to leave them in their original wrapper on my Star Trek shelf, because 1991 and still in packages, if I could have bought them all, I would have, but you saw the amount of books I picked up this month. So yeah, I had a lot of fun times, and I will have plenty to read from here on out, so Thank you for joining me for this massive book haul. As always, keep reading, keep writing, and until next time.